The room was electric, buzzing with the kind of tension that made every whisper feel like a drumbeat. Flashing cameras lit up the stage, capturing the moment with relentless precision. Bill Clinton, once the undisputed master of charm and political theater, leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice carrying the weight of decades in power. The crowd held its breath as he delivered a line that would immediately ignite outrage, a sharp, cutting remark about Jasmine Crockett's legal career, questioning her competence, her experience, and even her legitimacy in the halls of justice. A ripple ran through the audience, murmurs swelling into gasps. Some clutched their programs, others exchanged uneasy glances. The political elite, journalists, and influencers who had gathered for the evening felt the air tighten, as if the walls themselves were recoiling from the audacity of the attack. Every flash from the cameras seemed to punctuate the sting of his words, immortalizing the moment in digital permanence before anyone could even react. But the tension wasn't one-sided. Jasmine Crockett sat poised, composed, her eyes calm yet burning with an intensity that demanded attention. She did not flinch. The attack, meant to belittle her, instead revealed the gravity of the moment, the kind that separates theatrics from legacy, arrogance from dignity. In that instant, the room sensed that history was being written, that this was no ordinary confrontation. A few whispered, "What will she do?" Social media notifications began to ping in real time as clips of Clinton's remark were already being streamed, tweeted, and shared. Comments flew, "She's about to respond. Don't blink." The anticipation was palpable, a FOMO that gripped viewers even outside the venue, hinting that whatever came next would be unforgettable, impossible to ignore. Every eye turned toward her. The camera zoomed in, capturing the subtle shift in the room's energy, the suspense, the silent challenge, the calm before the storm. The air thickened with expectation. The audience could feel it, even if they didn't yet understand the force they were about to witness. And then the whisper spread like wildfire, almost a warning. The next words, the next moment, would leave the entire political world in disbelief. The question hung, heavy and irresistible: how would Jasmine Crockett answer an attack designed to undermine her very career? But what she said next would leave the entire political world in disbelief. The glittering hall of the political forum seemed, at first glance, a celebration of civility, tradition, and leadership. Yet beneath the polished floors and chandeliers, an undercurrent of tension pulsed like a hidden current ready to break. This was not just any debate or public appearance, it was a collision of eras, a confrontation that symbolized everything America was wrestling with: authority versus accountability, legacy versus progress, comfort versus courage. Bill Clinton, emblem of old-school political mastery, exuded confidence honed over decades, while Jasmine Crockett, rising star and unflinching defender of justice, represented a generation that demanded more than charisma, they demanded integrity. Every gesture, every word exchanged in that room carried weight far beyond the stage. The audience wasn't just witnessing a clash between two individuals, they were observing a test of America's very values. Leadership was under scrutiny, not just the titles or the accolades, but the principles guiding those who claimed to speak for the nation. And when Clinton's attack landed like a political missile, questioning Crockett's experience and competence, it wasn't merely a personal jab, it was a statement about power, credibility, and representation in a country still grappling with who gets to lead. Gender amplified the tension. Jasmine's poised defiance stood in stark contrast to the centuries-old pattern of women being undermined, minimized, and dismissed in positions of authority. Every eye in the room, every camera lens, captured the unspoken question: would she falter under the weight of a man's legacy, or would she rise above, reshaping the narrative for herself and millions watching at home? Outside the hall, the stakes were magnified exponentially. Social media feeds buzzed with speculation, pundits dissected every frame, and ordinary Americans, especially those from immigrant and marginalized communities, felt the resonance of the moment. Here was someone who shared their struggles, their dreams, and their dignity, facing an institution and an icon designed to intimidate. Every click, every share, every comment contributed to a growing wave of awareness and urgency. And yet, despite the pressure, Jasmine Crockett remained unshaken. There was a quiet power in her preparation, a readiness that suggested this was far more than a simple rebuttal. She understood the magnitude of the moment, how her words could challenge entrenched norms, inspire confidence, and ignite a movement. It wasn't arrogance, it was purpose, meticulously honed and waiting for the right moment to strike. The audience could feel it in the pauses between words, in the tension of the room, in the collective inhalation before the storm. Something monumental was about to unfold, something that would reverberate far beyond the evening's lights and cameras. The clash of political titans was not just about ego or reputation, it was about shaping how America sees leadership, justice, and the courage to stand unapologetically in one's truth. And as murmurs swirled, whispers grew louder, and every eye stayed locked on the poised figure at the center, the question loomed, could a new generation of leaders finally redefine the rules of the game? To understand the full impact, we need to look back at what led both figures to this moment. Bill Clinton's name carried weight long before this fateful evening. To millions, he was the embodiment of political brilliance, a figure who had navigated decades of public scrutiny, scandal, and triumph with a charisma that seemed almost effortless. From his early days in Arkansas to the Oval Office, he had mastered the art of persuasion, of making audiences feel both seen and compelled to follow. His speeches were measured, his smile disarming, and his presence commanding. Few could match the instinctive understanding he had of public sentiment, the ability to read a room and bend it subtly toward his vision. Yet within this aura of mastery lay the seeds of vulnerability, hidden contradictions that often went unnoticed until moments like tonight. Clinton's confidence, bordering at times on hubris, had allowed him to navigate scandals and criticism with a sly smile and a carefully timed quip. The same confidence that inspired admiration also fostered arrogance, the quiet assumption that decades of experience translated into untouchable authority. It was this belief, subtle but potent, that framed his attack on Jasmine Crockett. In his mind, experience alone conferred supremacy, youth, determination, and moral clarity were seen as challenges to be dismissed rather than engaged with. For years, he had stood as a figure of legacy, a master of the old political rules, charm, strategy, and relentless navigation of power structures. Yet these very rules carried a blind spot. They assumed that influence was measured in familiarity, not in principle, that history could dictate credibility more than character. When Clinton spoke in the glittering hall that night, he invoked decades of accomplishment as a shield, a subtle assertion that his authority was unassailable. But the political landscape had shifted. Audiences now craved accountability alongside charisma. They wanted leaders who could match principle with performance, integrity with intellect. And in that room, he had underestimated the cultural and emotional currents at play, the rising demand for leaders who could represent more than just a polished legacy. The contradictions were stark. Here was a man celebrated for navigating political crises, yet in this moment, he misjudged the force of his own rhetoric. The arrogance of assuming that experience alone could silence critique collided with a new era of scrutiny. The same charisma that had drawn millions into his orbit now risked being perceived as entitlement, a misalignment between past triumphs and present accountability. It was a reminder that even the most seasoned figures could falter when they underestimated the stakes or misread the character of those they confronted. Audience expectations amplified the drama. Many had come prepared to witness Clinton in his familiar role, poised, witty, unassailable. They expected the seasoned politician to navigate criticism effortlessly, to charm and disarm with the ease that had defined decades of public life. Instead, they were confronted with a misstep, a rare fracture in the armor of an otherwise formidable legacy. The contrast was striking. A titan of politics, usually in command of every narrative, now faced a challenge he had not fully anticipated. His words, intended to assert dominance, instead opened a door to confrontation, a crack through which the emerging strength of Jasmine Crockett could assert itself. Even the most loyal observers felt it, a subtle tension that hinted at a shift in power dynamics. Clinton's decades of influence were undeniable, yet tonight, they were not enough to guarantee control. His past triumphs, while monumental, could not shield him from the scrutiny of a generation unwilling to accept authority without accountability. It was a rare, cinematic moment, a man whose career was defined by precision and persuasion encountering a force that refused to be diminished by legacy alone. And yet, despite this foreshadowing of his vulnerability, the room could not help but respect the magnitude of his presence. The duality of Clinton's persona, masterful yet flawed, celebrated yet fallible, created a tension that electrified every listener. It was this contrast that set the stage for the confrontation, a seasoned figure, shaped by decades of experience, meeting a rising hero who would challenge not only his words but the very assumptions that had carried him for so long. But while his legacy loomed large, Jasmine Crockett's journey was just beginning. Jasmine Crockett's story begins far from the glare of national spotlight, in communities where justice was often promised but rarely delivered. From her earliest days, she witnessed the stark disparities in the legal system, the way privilege and power often outweighed principle. These experiences did not break her, they ignited a determination that would shape her entire career. With every challenge, every setback, Jasmine honed a resilience that was both quiet and unyielding, a force forged in the crucible of real-world struggle. Her legal career was defined not by the desire for fame, but by a relentless commitment to justice. She navigated the intricacies of law with precision, representing clients who had been overlooked, marginalized, or silenced. Each case became a testament to her intellect and moral courage. She had mastered the art of strategy in the courtroom, learning to anticipate moves, dismantle arguments, and present truth in a way that demanded recognition. But it wasn't just her mind that set her apart, it was the integrity with which she wielded it. For Jasmine, victories were never about personal glory, they were about righting wrongs, giving voice to the voiceless, and ensuring that the scales of justice, long tilted, were balanced, even if only incrementally. Public service became a natural extension of her legal work. She carried the same principles from the courtroom into the corridors of civic engagement, advocating for policies that addressed systemic inequities and uplifted communities often ignored by those in power. Her speeches, measured yet powerful, reflected a deep understanding of the issues, combined with an ability to connect emotionally with those who felt unheard. The combination of intellect and empathy made her not just a lawyer or politician, but a beacon for people seeking validation of their struggles and hope for real change. Colleagues, and overt challenges from those who underestimated her because of her youth, her gender, or her identity. Every obstacle became an opportunity to demonstrate tenacity. Critics often assumed that confrontation would shake her resolve, that the weight of experience, or the lack thereof in comparison to seasoned figures like Clinton, would leave her vulnerable. But they misjudged her. Every moment of doubt cast upon her, every whispered critique or subtle dismissal, had only strengthened her, preparing her for moments exactly like the one she faced now. What truly distinguished Jasmine was her moral courage. She did not rely on theatrics or empty rhetoric, her power came from the clarity of her principles and the depth of her preparation. She had studied the terrain, anticipated the pitfalls, and refined her ability to respond with precision. Her intelligence was matched by a calmness under pressure, a steadiness that inspired confidence in everyone who knew her and commanded attention from those who did not. Contrast amplified her emergence as a hero. Where Clinton wielded legacy like a shield, assuming authority could silence critique, Jasmine relied on substance over spectacle. Her rise was organic, rooted in lived experience, intellectual rigor, and a commitment to justice that no amount of celebrity could overshadow. In this moment, poised and alert, she embodied the promise of a new era, one where courage, empathy, and principle mattered as much as history and influence. Her journey was also deeply personal. She carried the aspirations of her community, the hopes of those who had been overlooked or underestimated, and the weight of proving that integrity could prevail even in arenas dominated by entrenched power. This connection gave her words gravity and her presence inevitability. People watching at home, particularly those from immigrant, marginalized, and progressive communities, could see themselves in her resolve. They could feel the thrill of vindication, the satisfaction of witnessing dignity stand unbowed. Every achievement, every struggle, every lesson had been preparing her for this confrontation. She was not reacting in the moment, she was executing a strategy crafted over years, informed by experience and sharpened by principle. In her calm, deliberate posture, the audience glimpsed not only a rising star but a leader who understood the stakes and was ready to meet them without compromise. Her legal victories, her advocacy, and her unwavering moral compass all converged into a single, potent reality. Jasmine Crockett was uniquely prepared to face the attack aimed at undermining her career and credibility. And in the context of that high-profile event, with the world watching, her presence carried an almost cinematic inevitability, a sense that the moment had been destined for her to rise. The stage was set, and the clash everyone feared was about to unfold. The tension in the room was palpable, almost electric, as the verbal sparring began in earnest. Bill Clinton, emboldened by decades of political experience, leaned into his critique, each word carefully measured but laced with unmistakable condescension. He questioned Jasmine Crockett's legal judgments, subtly undermined her credibility, and injected veiled insinuations about her ability to handle the weight of national leadership. The crowd shifted in their seats, a mixture of shock and fascination spreading across the room, as though they were witnessing a masterclass in high-stakes confrontation. Crockett, seated with impeccable poise, did not flinch. Her eyes, steady and unwavering, met Clinton's at every turn. Where others might have faltered under the weight of such a formidable figure, she remained composed, radiating a calm strength that quietly demanded respect. Her posture, measured and deliberate, conveyed an unspoken confidence. She knew precisely what was at stake, and she would not be rattled by theatrics or intimidation. Clinton's frustration began to show. The subtle cracks in his carefully constructed facade were noticeable, brief pauses, a tightening of his jaw, a sharper edge creeping into his voice. The seasoned politician, used to commanding every room, was encountering resistance the likes of which he had seldom faced. Every attempt to dominate the conversation was met with measured calm and precise counterpoints, and the audience could sense the shift. The imbalance of power, once assumed to favor the veteran, was quietly tilting. Whispers rippled through the audience. Cameras shifted angles, capturing every micro-expression, every twitch of tension. Commentators and aides exchanged glances, uncertain, as if the script they expected was no longer being followed. The room's energy fluctuated between anticipation and disbelief. People leaned forward in their seats, hearts quickening, captivated by the unfolding duel. Social media feeds, already streaming live, began to light up with commentary. "She's not backing down, watch her handle this, Clinton looks rattled." The digital world mirrored the live audience, amplifying the drama beyond the walls of the hall. Crockett's responses were precise and unyielding. She addressed each accusation with clarity, dismantling assumptions without aggression, yet each word carried weight, piercing through Clinton's rhetorical armor. Her intellect was on full display, her legal acumen evident to all. Every statement she made subtly flipped the narrative, turning what was intended as an attack into a demonstration of her mastery, her understanding, and her moral authority. The tension escalated as Clinton's remarks grew sharper, more pointed, and at times, almost desperate. He attempted to regain control with humor, charm, and the occasional patronizing smile, but Crockett met each maneuver with unshakable composure. The audience's attention was fully captured, every subtle gesture, every carefully chosen word, became part of a larger spectacle, a real-time drama of legacy confronting integrity. It was more than a debate, it was a study in contrast. Clinton represented experience and influence, yet the arrogance that once seemed invincible now appeared vulnerable. Crockett embodied focus, principle, and moral clarity, showing that true power was not always measured by years in office, but by courage, intellect, and the capacity to rise above intimidation. And then, Jasmine Crockett delivered the response that would leave everyone speechless. The room fell silent. Every eye fixed on Jasmine Crockett, poised and unflinching, as the weight of Bill Clinton's words lingered in the air. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the tension etched into every face, the anticipatory pause that preceded a storm. And then she spoke, not in haste, not with anger, but with a measured clarity that made the attack itself seem trivial. "Experience is valuable," she began, her voice calm yet resonant, "but experience without integrity is hollow. Leadership without accountability is meaningless. And credentials, while important, mean nothing if they are wielded to dismiss the voices of those who are committed to justice." Each word was deliberate, crafted to strike at the core of Clinton's condescension without resorting to theatrics. The room held its breath, sensing the precision behind her calm demeanor. Her first pause was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it carried weight. A hush settled over the crowd, punctuated only by the faint shuffle of papers and the click of cameras. The subtlety of her rhythm amplified the drama, each pause a drumbeat that prepared the audience for the revelation to come. Social media feeds lit up instantly. "She's speaking facts, this is masterful, Clinton looks unsettled." Clips began to circulate within seconds, capturing her words with perfect timing, each frame echoing her composure. Jasmine continued, methodically dismantling the claims made against her. "I have spent years in the courtroom advocating for those who have been overlooked, silenced, and ignored. My record is public, documented, and transparent. Every case I've taken, every argument I've made, has been guided by principle, not performance, by justice, not optics." The precision of her statements contrasted sharply with the improvisational tone of Clinton's attack. It was a stark reminder that true authority comes not from history or notoriety, but from substance and integrity. Clinton's posture began to shift subtly. The confident tilt of his head wavered, the smooth cadence of his prior remarks faltered. He opened his mouth to interject, only to pause mid-sentence, caught off guard by the clarity and composure of Crockett's delivery. It was as if every word she uttered chipped away at the foundation of authority he had assumed would shield him from challenge. The room's energy shifted perceptibly, from anticipation to awe, from tension to the thrill of witnessing a rare political reversal in real time. Audience reactions were immediate and visceral. Gasps spread through the hall, subtle nods of agreement, whispered affirmations. Influential attendees exchanged glances, their faces betraying a mix of surprise and admiration. A few journalists jotted notes furiously, already aware that this moment would dominate headlines. Social media notifications pinged relentlessly, hashtags surged, hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag justice prevails, hashtag mic drop. Memes and short clips began circulating even before the final syllable left her lips, the digital world amplifying her triumph. Jasmine's next line delivered a dramatic reveal. "For too long, the voices of women, minorities, and communities fighting for justice have been underestimated. But underestimation is not weakness, it is preparation. And tonight, that preparation meets its moment." The words landed like a hammer strike, precise and unavoidable. The audience felt it collectively, a mix of shock, exhilaration, and validation. Clinton's previously commanding aura had lost its certainty, even his most practiced expressions of charm and control faltered under the weight of her logic. She punctuated her argument with personal insight, further solidifying her position. "I am not here to challenge legacy for the sake of spectacle. I am here because justice cannot be postponed. Integrity cannot be optional. And leadership cannot survive if it dismisses those who have fought tirelessly to uphold the law, protect the vulnerable, and speak truth to power." Each phrase resonated deeply, reinforcing her role as both a moral and intellectual authority. The cadence, the pauses, and the deliberate framing created a theatrical rhythm that amplified impact without theatrics. Clinton shifted in his seat again, this time noticeably. The confidence that had allowed him to dominate rooms for decades now seemed fragile. His body language betrayed the unease she had skillfully provoked, subtle micro-expressions of frustration and incredulity leaking through despite attempts at composure. The audience, sensing the shift, reacted with restrained applause, cheers suppressed into a collective, powerful acknowledgement of Crockett's mastery. This was not a mere debate victory, it was a demonstration of moral authority and intellectual dominance over arrogance. The climax of her delivery came when she leaned slightly forward, voice unwavering but imbued with moral weight. We measure leaders not by their tenure or titles, but by their courage to stand for truth when it is inconvenient, their commitment to justice when it is risky, and their integrity when it is tested. Tonight, those principles are on display, not in rhetoric, but in action. The dramatic pause that followed seemed to stretch time itself. Every eye was locked, every camera trained, every heart in the room synchronized to the power of her declaration. Even as the words settled, the after-effects were immediate. Whispered affirmation circulated among attendees, admiration, surprise, and validation rippling through the crowd. Social media erupted further, commentators and influencers dissecting every word, praising her poise, her skill, her courage. The contrast could not have been clearer. Clinton, the seasoned political titan, had been unseated not by theatrics or insult, but by the unwavering force of principle, intellect, and calm authority. In those moments, the drama was complete. Crockett had transformed what could have been a fleeting confrontation into a defining moment of political theater, a masterclass in heroism, composure, and moral clarity. The villain's armor had cracked, the audience had witnessed a reversal few anticipated, and the world, both live and online, had taken note. The tension eased slightly, but the impact lingered in the air, resonating in the gasps, the murmurs, the endless social media notifications. This was not a temporary victory, it was a statement, a demonstration of the power of integrity, preparation, and moral courage. Every observer, whether in the room or across the globe, recognized the gravity of what had just transpired. The aftermath was instantaneous, the world couldn't stop talking about it. The moment had passed, but the world had not caught its breath. Social media exploded with activity. Within minutes, videos of Jasmine Crockett's poised, devastating rebuttal went viral, flooding feeds across Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Hashtags trended worldwide, hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag justice prevails, hashtag mic drop, each one a testament to the collective awe and validation that millions felt. Clips were clipped, remixed, and shared with captions that underscored the drama. Watch how she dismantles a political legend, this is how courage sounds. Clinton underestimated her, and we all saw it. Memes multiplied, some humorous, some reverent, all acknowledging the sudden seismic shift in the narrative. Analysts and commentators, usually measured and deliberate, could barely contain their surprise. Television panels replayed the confrontation, dissecting every pause, every word, every inflection. Pundits marveled at Crockett's strategy, noting how her calm, factual dismantling of Clinton's attack revealed both her mastery and the subtle arrogance of the seasoned politician. On cable news and online platforms, her performance was labeled a political masterclass, a moment where intellect and integrity triumphed over assumed superiority. Celebrities and influencers quickly joined the chorus, amplifying the moment for millions more. Tweets and posts praised Crockett's composure, her eloquence, and her unwavering moral courage. Some shared personal anecdotes about moments when they had been underestimated, connecting emotionally with her rise. Others framed the event as a watershed moment for women, minorities, and underrepresented communities, celebrating the symbolic victory of someone who refused to be diminished by the weight of legacy and status. Political commentators, initially focused on Clinton's reputation and decades of influence, were forced to reassess. The narrative that had long framed him as untouchable was now juxtaposed with a new reality, a rising leader who demanded respect not through name recognition or past triumphs, but through principled action and intellectual rigor. Columns appeared overnight discussing the implications for legacy, power, and generational transition in American politics. Social media threads debated her strategy, applauded her rhetorical skill, and questioned how such a moment might reshape the future of political discourse. Even within political circles, the impact was immediate. Staffers, strategists, and insiders analyzed the confrontation, acknowledging that Clinton's attack had backfired spectacularly. The power dynamic had shifted, and Crockett's rising influence could no longer be ignored. She had demonstrated that preparation, moral clarity, and courage could outshine decades of fame, forcing even the most seasoned political observers to acknowledge a new benchmark for leadership. The ripple effect reached ordinary Americans in real time. Progressive audiences, immigrant communities, and identity pride advocates saw their values reflected in Crockett's performance. They felt represented, validated, and inspired, sharing clips with friends, discussing the implications in online forums, and using the confrontation as a touchstone for conversations about integrity, justice, and generational change. The collective reaction underscored the power of a single moment to transcend the confines of the stage and reverberate across society. Media outlets framed it as a turning point. Headlines emphasized the clash of legacy versus principle, charisma versus substance, experience versus integrity. Analysts highlighted how Crockett had transformed a potential humiliation into a defining triumph, cementing her reputation not only as a formidable public figure but as a symbol of rising influence in an era hungry for accountability and courage. The cultural significance was undeniable. It wasn't just about one debate or one rebuttal, it was about what that rebuttal represented: the voice of reason, the triumph of moral courage, and the emergence of leadership rooted in principle. Across news cycles, social media, and private conversations, the message resonated: dignity and preparation could challenge even the most entrenched power. And yet, despite the viral clips, the hashtags, the commentary, and the global attention, a deeper truth lingered beneath the spectacle. The moment had revealed more than a public triumph or a viral sensation. It had unveiled a principle that transcended politics, a lesson in courage and integrity that would ripple far beyond the headlines. But beyond the headlines and viral clips, a deeper lesson was revealed. In the quiet aftermath, after the cameras had stopped flashing and the microphones had been muted, the essence of Jasmine Crockett's victory became clear. This was more than a debate, more than a clash of personalities, it was a demonstration of enduring principles. She had shown that dignity outweighs arrogance, that integrity carries more power than mere legacy, and that true leadership is measured not by years in office, but by courage, clarity, and commitment to justice. Her words, carefully chosen and delivered with calm precision, had done more than dismantle a political titan, they had reframed the conversation about what it means to lead. Where some see authority as a tool for self-preservation or prestige, Crockett illuminated leadership as a responsibility, a service to the people, a call to uphold values larger than oneself. She reminded the nation that positions of power are not rewards for longevity or popularity, but instruments for justice, fairness, and progress. The lesson resonated far beyond the gilded walls of the forum. Across living rooms, offices, and community centers, viewers felt a deep sense of affirmation. For those who had ever been underestimated because of gender, ethnicity, or age, Crockett's composure and intellect became a mirror of possibility, a proof that moral clarity can rise above any attempt to intimidate or diminish. In a single, poised performance, she had validated the experiences, aspirations, and pride of millions, reminding them that their voices matter and their principles can shape the world. Cinematic in its impact, the confrontation became a parable of resilience and justice. The juxtaposition of her calm authority against Clinton's faltering confidence created a narrative that transcended politics. It became a story of moral courage in the face of hubris. Her triumph was not loud or vengeful, it was deliberate, intelligent, and principled. Every pause, every measured response, every logical and ethical point reinforced a simple truth: power is fleeting, but integrity endures. She had also reframed the national dialogue on representation and equality. By standing firm, Crockett underscored the importance of diverse leadership and the need for public figures who reflect the values, struggles, and hopes of the communities they serve. She reminded viewers that patriotism is not merely ceremonial, it is active engagement, a willingness to challenge injustice, to speak truth, and to elevate collective welfare above personal gain. This was Americanness distilled: courage, service, and moral responsibility entwined in a single, unforgettable moment. The audience, both present and watching from afar, could feel the gravity of the lesson. They had witnessed a paradigm shift, a powerful affirmation that principles, not prestige, define a leader. Crockett's calm dismantling of arrogance became an emotional touchstone, inspiring reflection and action. Conversations sparked across households and online forums alike. What does it mean to lead with honor? How do we measure influence if not by the ability to uplift rather than undermine? The ripple effect was both intimate and expansive, a testament to the enduring power of one person's courage. In the end, the confrontation became more than a headline, it became a symbol. A reminder that when dignity confronts arrogance, when integrity confronts entitlement, the results are transformative. Jasmine Crockett had not only defended her own reputation, she had illuminated a path for others, proving that courage and principle are forces capable of reshaping narratives, challenging assumptions, and inspiring generations. And so, the confrontation left an indelible mark, one that still inspires millions. Bill Clinton's attack may have been intended to undermine Jasmine Crockett's credibility, but what unfolded instead became a defining moment of courage, integrity, and truth. Her poised rebuttal didn't just defend her career, it reminded the nation that arrogance can never overshadow principle, that legacy without accountability is hollow, and that true leadership is earned through service, justice, and moral clarity. The video you've just watched captures more than a clash of political titans, it captures a lesson that resonates far beyond any single debate stage. This is a moment to reflect on what real leadership looks like. It's about standing firm in the face of intimidation, responding with intelligence and integrity, and uplifting communities that have historically been overlooked. Jasmine Crockett's example shows us that courage isn't loud or aggressive, it's deliberate, calculated, and deeply principled. It is the kind of courage that inspires others to believe in themselves, to engage in civic discourse, and to fight for what is right, even when the odds seem stacked against them. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of the power of dignity over arrogance and integrity over entitlement, then don't let the lesson stop here. Subscribe to the channel to follow more stories where courage and principle prevail, share this video to inspire others, and engage in conversations about justice, leadership, and accountability. Every like, every share, and every discussion is part of a ripple that strengthens the values we hold dear. Remember, history may honor legacy, but it celebrates those who act with integrity. Let Jasmine Crockett's triumph be a call to action for all of us, because standing for truth, justice, and courage is how we shape a better tomorrow.